Hi there, mattphilleo in the studio, working in a very warm studio. I turned off my air conditioning so that the noise doesn't interfere with the video. But anyway, working on this 16, or actually 11 by 14 acrylic portrait, and right now I'll be working on the skin tones. Just beginning to develop them using some glazes, semi-opaque layers. And I just wanted to invite you to watch over my shoulder as I work on this project. So my palette is kind of a mess right now, but that's okay. I know where the colors are at. And I have color right now, it's a mixture of red-orange, organic red-orange, Indian yellow, white, a little bit of raw sienna and burnt sienna. And I'm just popping it into a few places, especially by the cheeks. I'm trying to get them a little bit pinker than the rest of the face. So here I have a portion that's a little bit more to the red side because it has a little more of a red mixture. And I'm adding it just to this side here and then dabbing as I add this mixture. I'm also going to add it to the other side. And again, just dab it so that I can soften up that edge and build up a gradient. And this is a really easy way to get some shading, because you and I all know it's very difficult to shade with acrylic. I mean, it dries so fast, and blending with it is just a nightmare for a lot of artists. They try retardant mediums and different things to slow down the drying time. I found them just to be a pain because it doesn't dry as fast as oils, obviously, or I should say it dries way faster than oils, even with the retardant medium, but it doesn't dry fast enough, you know, that you can end up smearing your canvas. So I like to just stick with the traditional properties of acrylic paint, that it dries very quickly, and I do these small layers, at least when I get to the mid to final stages of the painting. I just do these very faint layers. They dry within just a minute or two, and that way I can rest my hand on the canvas and not smear it. Whereas with oil, again, that would be a problem, or if your paint's mixed with the slow drying medium, that would be a problem too. And another thing is, you know, this particular portrait is on a deadline. Actually, that's not quite the right color. Let's grab something with a little more of a yellowish tint to it. There we go. But this portrait here is on a deadline, and so I have to get it done by the end of the week. And the nice thing about this is I can paint this and literally give it to the client a couple hours later, and everything will be completely dry. Whereas with oil, well, I'd have to wait at least a few days, if not longer. So, I love acrylic for that reason. Now, I want to use some of this reddish color and just pop it into this area in this upper lip. Just a little spot that I think could use a little of that color. And I think there's also some on this side. Now, let's take a darker mix. This has a little more raw sienna in it, and even just a bit of raw umber dark, and I'll pop it into this side of his face because there is a gradient there. And after you get those initial layers in with a flat brush, you can really start to use a round brush, and I find it works quite well. Now, if I think that maybe I need to extend this portion of his temple out a little bit, I'm going to add some white Indian yellow to make that warm enough to compensate for the white, raw sienna, and maybe just a bit of red. And I want to extend his temple out just a bit because I think I had it a little too narrow. So I'm just faintly touching the canvas, making that little correction with opaque paint, getting this area just a bit thicker over there. I want to get the overall dimensions of his face correct. That's very important because I think I have the features correct, the shapes of the features, but the proportions may be just a bit off. I think they comprise a smaller portion of his overall head size. So I've been increasing the top of his hair, his forehead, just expanding this area a little bit, expanding his chin downward a little bit, and just endeavoring to get those portions more accurate. Now let's work on the coloring of his lips just a bit. I'm going to go in with a nice kind of cream color. This is the same thing I was using on the cheeks, but a little more organic red-orange. I'm just going to add it in just a little bit on the top and lighten it ever so slightly. And actually raise his lips up just a little bit. So I physically want his lip to get a little bit higher. Okay. And while I have this color on there, let's see if I can also get a little more of a gradient. Take some burnt sienna, add it to the mix, a little bit of burnt sienna, just so it's not too red. As I'm getting to this side where it's darker, the colors have to get cooler, so let's add some raw umber dark. And that's just a little too warm. I want to darken this side just a bit as we get into this shadow. And then we can even darken this whole section of his face, and you know, so since it does have some white in it, it's going to start closing the gaps, smoothing out some of that rough look of the glazing technique, but still retaining quite a bit of its charm, of its luminosity. And then let's also thicken up this area. When I mean thicken up, not with texture you can touch, but just a little more opaque. Take some raw umber dark, and then I'm going to go over this section right here by his eyes, getting that eye socket area in there, just trying to get the values darker as they ought to be. You can even go over this section below his chin, darken that up just a bit, and then it does get a little lighter as we get into this area here by his jowls and into the vertical mouth wrinkles that correspond to either side of his face. This should be a bit darker as well. In fact, I'm going to take a cooler color here. I have some bluish brownish paint, and I'm just going to mix it in with a little more raw sienna. I want to get a mixture between these two. See, what I want to do is get under his chin darker, and it's kind of a cooler tone than the rest of the face, so I want to get that differentiation in there. There'll be another level in there, a little bit of a gradient I have to achieve, but we'll just let that layer sit for now. And let's see, is there anything else I can do on this? Let's darken this portion of his face. Let's get that a little yellower. I noticed that it is just a little yellower in tone. So let's do that. Using crisscross strokes, vertical first. Wipe off excess paint on your towel, so then you can just kind of spread it out and fan it out and smooth it out. even dry brush it a little bit towards the lighter side and get a nice gradient. And that's how we do it. And there's a lot of layers to go on this, but I'm going to stop here and just say, if you're watching this as a course at Realistic Acrylic, skip ahead to the next lesson. And if you're watching this elsewhere, be sure to give this a thumbs up if you like it, if you find it helpful. I have more tutorials and a full-length course of this portrait at Realistic Acrylic Portrait School. That's realisticacrylic.com, where you can see more tutorials just like this on how to paint a portrait that you're proud of. So I hope to see you there. Let me know if you have any questions or if you need any help in your portrait painting, and I'll be happy to help you out. So God bless, and we'll talk to you soon.